Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Now, as always, I was lurking our own subreddit, r/Mark Narrations by the way, when I came across user General Programmer 5 who says, "Hey Mark, remember the story when an entitled mother-in-law stole OP skeleton keys? The latest update is absolutely wild." And I was like, what? So I thought we got to get back involved in that. As always, I'm going to read the original parts of the story, then the new update as well. So if you want to skip certain parts of the story, as timestamps are always going to be down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. This is from My Keys Were Stolen, and the original title was Would I Be the Arsehole If I Pressed Charges on My Mother-in-Law for Selling My Collection of Vintage Skeleton Keys to Buy a New Phone? This is somewhat urgent. My mother-in-law is insanely entitled, and my wife's enabling of her has made our marriage very hard at times. Mother-in-law has come to us for money many times because she keeps spending herself into a hole because she's a hoarder. Recently she came to us wanting me specifically to buy her a new smartphone, and she threw a massive fit when I refused. I had quite a collection of vintage skeleton keys, and I mean good ones, like ones to particular hotels, the large ornate sergeants, brass railroad keys, etc. My collection as a whole should have easily been worth $2,000 to $3,000. I kept them in a locked display cabinet, but yesterday I came home to find my entire collection gone. The cabinet had been forced open. I checked the CCTV for the living room and saw my mother-in-law force the cabinet with a small crowbar. I called my mother-in-law and demanded she return my entire collection. She nonchalantly told me she sold the entire collection at pawn already and used the money for her new phone, then said it was my fault and she had to do it because I wouldn't give her the money. My wife was seemingly on my side until I said I was going to call the police. Now she's begging me to just drop it and even suggested I just start a new collection. A lot of those keys are irreplaceable and I spent 10 years building that collection. Mother-in-law has been in trouble in the past, but this is the first time I know that she has stolen from us. I need help. Would I be the arsehole if I went to the police? Edit. It hasn't even been an hour and this has already been made pretty clear to me. I'm calling the police. My wife is at work right now, so she's not here to object. Update. Text mother-in-law and goaded her into admitting everything she did, which pawn shop she went to, and how much she sold my collection for. So now I've got plenty of evidence. We'll update again on a separate post on my profile later. A couple of the top comments just to give you a gist. Baron says you would be the arsehole if you didn't report her. I would seriously consider sending your wife to live with mother-in-law as she's basically enabling her. Opie says I love my wife and there have been days where I considered saying something like that to her, but somehow we've always managed to work things out till now. That collection was my pride and joy. Celtic Musebook says this is the tipping point. The police should be able to get your collection back if you know the pawn shop. Present the idea that getting your collection back is the only thing that will keep her out of jail. And make it clear that if you get most of your property back and don't press charges, your mother-in-law can never enter your home again under any circumstances. And the first time reading this, that was my exact same thoughts, that your wife is enabling this behavior. You need to press charges to get your collection back, otherwise you're never going to see it again. But yeah, always press charges. Opie came in with an update and says my wife bailed out her mother with our shared money. It says this is just a small update. I plan on a big one in roughly a week. But I'm taking some time off work, locking down my credit, and I've got an appointment for a consultation with a divorce lawyer tomorrow. I'm honestly surprised I got one this soon. No, I don't have the keys back yet. Police still have them, but they'll be returned soon. I think they have enough to go through it all and compare it to the documentation I provided. But my wife and I had a big fight because she took the money to bail out her mother and pay off the pawn shop from our joint bank account. I'm removing any money I have in that account tomorrow. My wife can have what's left. That was all hers. I haven't been sleeping well and the stress has given me migraines, but I'm determined to power through this. Main Chocolate says, your wife did you a tremendous favor. She exposed herself for the person she truly is. Consider yourself one lucky man to discover this relatively early in the relationship. The mother-in-law and her enabler will continue down this path, but luckily their actions will soon have zero effect on you. Sit back and watch the shit show their lives become. Opie says I'd like to sit back, but doing that won't get me a divorce. I'll relax and enjoy the show once I've got things set in motion. Opie then says I got my key collection back from the police and I'll try to post pictures of some of them, and then shares a few pictures. And as keys go, there's some pretty fancy looking keys, it has to be said. Bookworm said on the back of that said, "Great news. Did you get the bail money back and change the locks? Did the divorce lawyer suggest anything regarding your home?" Opie says, "Yeah, I got the bail money back by removing everything I had in the joint account. So technically, my wife has paid it out of her half and not realized it yet. And yes, I did change the locks." Bookworm responded to Opie and said, "Good. She will have a fit when she finds out. I'm sure you realize that. You have a garage. If so, maybe you can pack up her belongings and put them there so you don't have to let her in the house again. Or a front porch." Unity Bitchford says, "How are things going? Is your mother-in-law being charged with theft?" Opie says, "As far as I know, yes. She was only bailed out. She'll eventually have to go to court." So Opie came in with her next update and says, "This was originally supposed to just be a normal update. However, my original post was removed, and I provided a little updates before. So I'm posting a big update that's also a bit of a compilation. I also had a character limit before, so I can provide more detail now, though this got way longer than expected. I apologize for that. My mother-in-law is insanely entitled, and my wife's enabling of her has made our marriage very hard at times. Mother-in-law has come to us for money a lot because she keeps spending herself into a hole since she's a hoarder and a shopaholic. The house is full of garbage, junk, and unopened stuff she never uses. The house is rodent infested too. She has one semi-clean room in the whole building, and it's the master bedroom. She's mocked it up to like a little studio apartment with a futon to sleep on and uses as a couch. An entertainment center with TV and streaming, and a makeshift kitchen consisting of the adjoining bathroom, a mini fridge and a microwave. Mother-in-law's also overweight because she eats out a lot. Recently, mother-in-law came to us, wanting me specifically to buy her a new smartphone as an unprompted gift, and she threw a massive fit when I refused. And I mean a child temper tantrum kind of fit. Why did she want a new phone so suddenly? Hers was 2 years old, that's literally it. As far as I know, it still worked fine. Even my wife has confirmed this. But my mother-in-law was resolute that she deserved a new phone, and before leaving, mother-in-law yelled at us that we're supposed to be pampering her now she's an old woman. She's 53. My wife also didn't want to buy her mother the phone because she gave her money not long before to make sure her bills were paid. I have quite a collection of vintage skeleton keys, and I mean good ones. Like ones to particular hotels, the large ornate sergeants, brass railroad keys, reading or reading hardware, etc. My collection as a whole should easily be worth $2,000 to $3,000. Some of those keys are super rare. I kept them in a locked display cabinet, but a few days ago I came home to find my entire collection gone. The cabinet had been forced open. I checked the CCTV for the living room and saw my mother-in-law force open the cabinet with a small crowbar. She then put all the keys in a couple of boxes she brought with her and left with them. I called mother-in-law right away and demanded she return my collection. She nonchalantly told me that she sold the entire collection at pawn already and used the money for a new phone. Ben said it was my fault and she had to do it because I wouldn't give her the money. My wife was seemingly on my side until I said I was going to call the police. She begged me to just drop it and even suggested I start a new collection. I refused to let it go because a lot of the keys are also not only expensive, they're irreplaceable. I spent 10 years building that collection, but my wife kept blowing up at me, then telling me to just let it go. So I slept in the guest room that night and sought online help the next day. And my best friend told me to try Reddit. I'd been a lurker before, but making an account wasn't hard. My mother-in-law has been in trouble in the past, but this was the first time I know of that she had stolen from us. I needed help, so I asked here. The resounding advice finally made me pull my head out of my bum to realize I was the only one keeping my marriage afloat. It would likely never get better if my wife wasn't on my side when her own mother steals something irreplaceable from me. Now to answer some quick questions I got before. 1. How did mother-in-law get into the house? My wife unilaterally gave her a key when we moved in. That's why. 2. Why did I have CCTV cameras in the living room? Really? Wouldn't you do that if you had something valuable on display there? 3. Is mother-in-law on drugs? No idea. She's always been crazy. 4. Did mother-in-law steal from us before? Not that I've been able to tell. I've checked everything I could think of. 5. What kind of phone did mother-in-law get? Not a clue, but probably one of the cheaper smartphones with the amount of money she got for selling my stuff. Unless she's on a payment plan. 6. Did my wife use my money to placate her mother before? Yes, she did. We primarily have separate accounts, but we do have a joint account we pay the bills with. So it's not used for savings. In 2 years of marriage, I'd say it happened roughly 5 times. Every time my wife took money from the joint account for her mother, she'd always replace it on her next payday. Though in hindsight, she only did so because she knew I'd never let it go. Because she would always have an attitude with me a few days after. I was in a bad marriage fog before, but this whole situation has snapped me right out of it. 7. Will I lock down my credit? I already have, though I'm not sure my wife or her mother would be so stupid to do something like that after mother-in-law was recently arrested. I mean, jumping in here, I wouldn't be surprised if she did. I mean, she went into your house with a crowbar and stole keys out of your home with the entitled attitude that she deserves to do this kind of thing. I mean, that's crazy ass behavior in itself. But Opie continues saying, back to what happened that day. Police did come and take my statement a bit over an hour after I called the non-emergency line. I had video footage and the documentation of my collection ready, and there were some texts I went out of my way to get from mother-in-law to bait her into a confession. I wanted as much evidence as possible so she couldn't lie to police. When I texted her demanding she get my collection back, she actually lolled and told me not a chance, and even boasted that she thought I was a pathetic son-in-law and my key collection was tacky anyway. I told her at least tell me what pawn shop she sold the keys to so I could go buy them back and how much they paid her for them, and the dimwit admitted it all right away with glee in text. I had everything I needed for the police before they even showed up. The cops took the whole matter more seriously than I thought. I was worried they'd call it a civil matter since the thief was my mother-in-law and she'd had the key to the house, but they arrested mother-in-law before long and police went to the pawn shop before it closed to retrieve my collection. I got it all back from the police after a couple of days, and for the moment I put the collection in a safe, secure place that no one could get to. The pawn shop pretty much gave up the entire collection to the police right away, like it was a bag of hot potatoes. So I scrutinized every important key brought back. As far as I can tell, it's all there. There was a huge sigh of relief. I took time off work and barely slept for 2 days because of this ordeal. Also, the cabinet mother-in-law broke into is pretty much a loss since she mangled the lock and the doors prying it open. Thankfully, it wasn't an antique and just something I got used for $50. I'm just going to take it to the dump sooner or later. From her text before, I found out mother-in-law sold the whole collection to the pawn shop for a whopping total of $300. For a collection of hundreds of antique keys valued at $2 to $3 grand in total, that low number felt like a punch in the gut to me. Likely the pawnbroker knew how valuable the collection could be as a whole. I mean, it's not like hitting a jackpot or anything, but money is still money. Especially when a dumb little lady walks in with a box of goodies. Anyone else hear Mr. Krabs laughing? SpongeBob, my boy. Anyway, the cost of repayment to the shop was supposed to be on mother-in-law, but my wife paid them back out of our joint account instead. From what the shop owner said, mother-in-law told him the key collection belonged to her deceased husband, and she was sick of the whole collection sitting in storage, so they believed her. But just to be clear, she's not a widow. Her husband divorced her and left the state around 15 years ago. Mother-in-law lives off Social Security and food stamps. She also holds garage sales every few months. And she often demanded our soda and beer cans so she could get the deposit money recycling them. Mother-in-law doesn't drive. She gets around on an electric scooter that tows a bicycle trailer. Lives in a long paid off house. And she would not be having money troubles if she wasn't overspending every month. And she always counts on my wife to pick up the slack when she comes up short. My wife and I got into a huge fight when she got home because I had her mother arrested, but I told her I'm done with her enabling of a toxic mother. I said I was changing the locks ASAP and banning her mother from the house. And I said we either got marriage counseling or I'd be inquiring about my options for separation from an attorney. I thought my wife would beg me not to do that, but instead she just called me horrible, packed the suitcase and walked out to go to a motel. I just sat on the couch and let her go. She repeatedly looked like she was waiting for me to ask her to stay, but I didn't. In the morning she texted me she'd be bailing her mother out and wanted me to transfer the money to pay for it since I was the one who got her mother arrested. When I said no, all I got back was a sarcastic, "Wow," and that was it. Not too long later, I had a gut feeling and checked the balance on the shared bank account, and my wife had taken out a lot of money. I wasn't sure if all that was needed for bail, so I called the pawn shop later. He only confirmed my wife had come in and paid him back the $300 that he'd paid her mother for the keys. He was also quite angry and said he didn't want any of us in his shop ever again. I understood his anger, and weirdly enough had a fairly long talk with this guy, and he understood I'm not part of the crazy. I tried to call and text my wife for hours, but she didn't answer. That evening I managed to find her. I knew which motel she'd likely go to, and I was right. It was both cheap and not far away. I found her car and then figured out which room she was in. She looked positively shocked to see me when she opened the door. I confronted her about the money she used from our shared account. She basically said that since I refused to pay her mother's bail after I was the one who had her arrested, she got the money from me another way, then smugly stated she wasn't paying that money back into the shared account this time, and told me that's the karma I get, before shutting the door in my face. Then said through the door she'd call the cops on me if I didn't leave. The smug look she'd given me reminded me of the nasty teenage girls when they'd get their way. It really ticked me off. I already knew my marriage was pretty much over, but that night it really sank in. I had a long sit down with some old video games and cola to think about my future. The house is rented, so I'm not renewing my half of the lease and will soon be apartment hunting. The last month of the lease is in March, but I may leave sooner, depending on how soon I can find an apartment. We have no kids yet, thank God, so that's another thing I currently have in my favour. The next day I changed the locks on the house and removed all of my money from the joint bank account and stopped all automated payments to and from it. I made sure to take only the amount of money I put into the account. There's still more than enough in it for me to break even and still leave the minimum required balance on the account. Either way, the cost of mother-in-law's bail and paying back the pawn shop was now entirely out of my wife's pocket now, and I don't think she's noticed yet. But it shouldn't be long. I've been to a couple different divorce lawyers already, and I picked the second one since the first seemed like they were only there for a paycheck. I'll have the divorce papers served soon. I love my wife, but it's clear she didn't love me, so I can't stay with her anymore. She can have her thieving hoarder mummy all to herself now. We both have very comparable incomes, so I'll be pushing for a clean split divorce. This woman didn't deserve me, and I fell for her act. She didn't want a husband, she wanted an insurance plan. I'll pursue any charges still possible against her mother. I'll update again when more happens, but I'll be clear on this, I won't be changing my mind. My soon-to-be ex-wife can beg and love bomb all she wants, if she even bothers to. I've never been her number one, and I'm not going to settle for being number two in my own marriage. It is over. A commenter said, "What did you have to do to get your keys back?" Opie says police returned them to me at the station after a couple of days. Another commenter says, "I'm so sorry. However justified, it still hurts." Opie says, "I've become numb to the pain now, but it was bad when it hit." Opie came in with one more update, which was titled, "My key-stealing crazy mother-in-law passed away, and it's kinda my fault." I've decided I will no longer be referring to my soon-to-be ex-wife as wifey. Even that feels wrong now. So I'll just be saying STBEXW, soon-to-be ex-wife, instead. A few months ago, I anonymously reported my mother-in-law as a serious hoarder. Someone here commented I should report my mother-in-law's hoarding to the fire marshal, and at the time I decided to do it because I was angry and wanted to get back at her for stealing my collection from me and making my life hell. Mother-in-law had been building a hoard in her house since my wife was a teenager. The house was filled nearly to the brim with rotten garbage and was rodent infested. I've actually seen rats there. I made a call to the city from a number I googled. At first I thought nothing came of it as weeks went by, but I guess someone looked into it, because mother-in-law's house was given an inspection. The house was found to be in even worse shape than I thought. It was not only a serious fire hazard to itself and everything around it, and rodent infested, there were also some exposed electrical wires, a roof leak that's gone unfixed for years that caused bad rot damage and black mold. The outside of the house didn't look that bad, and it was in a neighborhood full of old houses that looked similar, which is likely why no one reported it till I did. My soon-to-be ex-wife figured out it was me who reported her mother, what with the timing and all. She came home and ranted to me about all the things her mother told her the inspector found, and how her mother was likely to lose her house now. There was only a matter of time before something like that happened. If I didn't report her mother, someone else eventually would have. Soon-to-be ex screamed at me that I was a horrible, deceitful person. I asked her if she wanted to be the pot or the kettle, then reminded her of all the reasons why we were separating. I ended up losing my cool and ranted at her, saying that her enabling mother caused this. Her acting like her mother stealing my irreplaceable skeleton key collection I spent a decade building wasn't important caused this, and her selfish unilateral decision and bratty behaviour ever since we got married caused this. Couples are supposed to make decisions together. Instead, she just kept making them for the both of us without even asking my input. So I made a unilateral decision of my own for once and reported her mother's hoarding, which needed to be reported anyway because it's a danger to her and the people around her. I told soon-to-be ex-wife I was long sick of just sucking it all up all the time and just letting things pass while they acted like I was the bad guy and walked all over me. Her mother would get nothing more from me, and maybe she wouldn't be as crazy once she no longer lived in a house filled with fumes of rotten garbage, rodent excrement, and black freaking mold. Soon-to-be ex-wife just walked away sniffling and cursing me. Yeah, I know I went too far. I've been reduced to just being as petty as her. I made that call because I was angry, but I had no choice but to stand by that decision after I'd done it. Mother-in-law ended up demanding my soon-to-be ex foot the cost of cleaning and restoring the house, but she couldn't afford it. From what I heard, mother-in-law went off on her with her demands and told her to get the money any way she could, even demanding I pay for it since I was the one who reported the house. She even said to sue me, but soon-to-be ex-wife told her it wouldn't work. The house was in exceedingly poor shape. Rotten garbage, exposed wires, roof leaks, rotten black mold. No one should be living like that. When soon-to-be ex-wife tried to tell her mother she couldn't afford to pay for the house to be cleaned and renovated, her mother actually attacked her like a wild animal. She hit and scratched her multiple times and tried to pull her hair out. That's when it happened. Mother-in-law had a heart attack on the spot. Going ape on her daughter must have triggered it. Soon-to-be ex called 911 while looking for aspirin in the house, but by the time help had arrived, her mother had expired. Soon-to-be ex-wife came home with a police officer in tow for some reason and was absolutely mad, screaming at me about what just happened to her mother. She said it was all my fault, and in all of her ranting, I found out her mother had a weak heart. That's the real reason why she was on disability. The officer had to separate soon-to-be ex-wife from me, and she fell onto the couch sobbing. I hated mother-in-law with a passion, but I wasn't trying to end her life. I still feel great guilt over this. From what the police officer said and from what my soon-to-be ex-wife said, I pieced together the story and later typed it out. I just couldn't bring myself to post it. I'm still racked with guilt and had to take a serious break from Reddit. That evening when I found out my mother-in-law had passed away, soon-to-be ex-wife managed to calm down long enough to speak to the police officer more clearly about what happened, but she also kept shifting between blaming herself and blaming me. I asked her from across the room why I was never told about her mother's heart condition, and she yelled it was none of my damn business. But it explains why mother-in-law used to dramatically put her hand on her chest and cry so many times when she wasn't getting her way. My soon-to-be ex-wife ended up going crazy in the bathroom she'd been using since we started sleeping separately. She asked the police officer for a moment to herself, then just went crazy after shutting the door. She came out after a few minutes later looking angry but calm, and told me I was cleaning that mess up. She packed her bags again and left the house for the motel once more, and told me she wouldn't be coming back unless it was to get her stuff. I was so guilt-ridden that I was hardly able to function for days back then, and had to take a break from work because of the stress migraines. I basically spent 3 days on the couch hopped up on meds, but after I got my ass in gear again, my friends all tell me it wasn't my fault. I didn't know and mother-in-law was crazy. Either way, what's done is done and I have to live with it. Sadly, there's more that's happened which I'll be telling in another post. Edits, I came back to find over 200 comments in my inbox, and I want to thank everyone for the support I've been given. It's too much for me to reply to all, so I'll respond from here. Did I move into that apartment in March? Yes, I did. The events of this post happened before that move. Is this post fake? I wish it was, but this is the crap I've dealt with. Am I in therapy? Yes, I am. Only for about a month now, but it's helping. Very few were against me in the comments, but I don't blame those that were. Yeah, mother-in-law's heart condition was unknown to me, and I set things in motion by calling the fire marshal. I understand hoarding is a bad mental disorder. I'm guilty for that. I'm not made of stone, but at the same time, my mother-in-law was a narcissist who loved walking all over me and anyone else, even her own daughter. Yes, I understand it's a scary thing to lose one's home, but if you don't treat your home as a home and let it be turned into a moldy infested den, then you've let your home down. She was only able to live in one room of it because the rest was so bad. And about a week ago, I drove by the property and saw mother-in-law's house had been torn down. There's nothing but an empty lot now. Yes, it was deemed as an unsalvageable biohazard. And then OP came in with another update. I actually recorded this episode a couple of days ago, and then OP came out with some new updates at the same time. So this update was called "My soon-to-be ex-wife tried to defame me and it backfired badly." For the people who kept telling me to not divorce, that my wife loved me, etc., you all couldn't have been more wrong. I couldn't even tell who amongst you were trolls or just naive fools. Some even brought religion into it. I couldn't care less about someone's religious views on divorce. They're not me, they're not living my life. I remember an old example of a rich man saying he knows how hard it is to pay for gas when he drives $1 million car. He can't know the struggle of paying for gas when he has enough wealth to buy an obscenely expensive automobile. In the same way, someone can't claim to know whether or not my soon-to-be ex-wife loved me just because. They didn't live with her or mother-in-law. They did not suffer at their hands, so they don't have valid reasons to say they knew better. I apologize for the length of this post, but there's a lot to say. Edit. Just want to make sure everyone reading knows this all happened months ago. I did have a break from Reddit for some time for mental health reasons, so if some things seems like they're happening too quickly, it's because this is just speaking of things that already happened. I'm just posting the stories of what happened quickly to get them out. My soon-to-be ex-wife pretty much admitted to my face that she only married me for financial security. So yeah, I was exactly right. She spent years grooming me so she could trap me in marriage and walk all over me. And yes, she did have plans to baby trap me as well after I initiated divorce. I confirmed this, but she dropped any act of wanting to save the marriage after her mother died. In my last post, I told how I reported my mother-in-law's hoarding and how her house was inspected and scheduled to be condemned. She demanded my soon-to-be ex to pay for the house to be fixed, but when soon-to-be ex said she couldn't pay, her mother went ape on her and then died from a heart attack soon after. She had a congenital heart condition, was completely unaware of till after she had kicked the bucket. I was told for years she was on disability only for mental problems, but she actually had a weak heart. Her potentially being removed from the only home she lived in for decades put her stress over the edge, and her heart gave out when she attacked her own daughter for being unable to phone a home restoration. Yes, I do still feel guilty about what happened, but it's in the past now. Mother-in-law's house was torn down, not sure when, but about a week before making my previous post. I drove over to where her house was, and there was nothing but an empty lot now. The house was likely declared a biohazard or something. Not sure if my soon-to-be ex-wife owns the property now or if it was sold, I don't know. I can't imagine my soon-to-be ex-wife inherited much of anything good from her mother's hoarder den. The house was so bad, I'd even seen a rat scurry by across the top of the hoard once. Many past commenters were exactly right about my soon-to-be ex-wife was likely aiming at trying to baby trap me with her love-bombing behaviour. A few days after she left to the motel, when her mother died, I went into the bathroom. She tore up to clean it. She'd left it in quite a bit of a state the day she left, having a meltdown in there. But thankfully nothing but her personal items were broken. She did splatter shampoo all over the walls though. When I was cleaning, I looked in the wastebasket and noticed a bottle of pills with fertility support written on the label. When I removed the cap from the bottle, the paper seal had been torn out. I googled this stuff and it was a common female fertility vitamin that anyone could buy online or in store, not prescription. I confronted my soon-to-be ex-wife when she came to get more of her stuff. She admitted that she had hoped to get pregnant so I wouldn't divorce her, but that was before her mother died. After that, she said she'd never want to touch me again, and she scoffed when I said that I felt that way towards her for a while before she did me. I never found out if my ex put anything in the food or open beer she tried to serve me though. I searched the house top to bottom for anything else that might have been a clue and came up with nothing. So she may have just wanted to get me drunk. I can't express enough though how glad that I am that I didn't have a child with this woman. I wasn't allowed to mother-in-law's funeral, though I didn't really want to go. My soon-to-be ex-wife specifically told me that she didn't want me there, and I responded that I understood why. But then later, soon-to-be ex-wife posted online that she was furious barely anyone from her family showed up, not even after her father came, and then she lied by saying I was invited but refused to come, which was blatantly false, and I had screenshots of our text proving it. When my soon-to-be ex-wife left the house after her mother died, she went back to the motel for an extended stay, Well, she moved her stuff out bit by bit, either to storage or a friend's place. I don't know since I didn't help. I heard from her friends she eventually found a studio apartment but hated living in such a small space after previously having a house. She was also seen looking miserable at the local laundromat. Our former landlord agreed to keep the extra furniture neither of us could take, as his new incoming renters were happy to use them. A lot of you thought she would, but my soon-to-be ex-wife did not try to sabotage the house in any way, other than her bathroom tantrum. But she stubbornly refused to help pay for a cleaning service. She made it more than obvious she was doing that to spite me. So rather than wasting time fighting with her about it, I hired a cleaning crew myself. Then I left that house spotless, and I got back my half of the security deposit without issue. I did later buy a used Kent Ridgeland bike and started riding again. The bike had a replacement seat, but is otherwise bone stock original. I only ride a little at a time these days, currently once or twice a week at most. I just don't have the passion for it I used to, but I do enjoy my short cruises around town, and while I could commute to work on a bike, the surprising amount of warnings I got from people here telling me that's a bad idea made me reconsider doing it. It didn't help that I found out that some friend of a friend got hit by a car while on his bike a couple of months ago. So I'm just hobby riding instead of commuting. My best friend joins me sometimes too. He got a red Mongoose mountain bike he dusted off. It needed tyres, so I put some on for him and gave the bike a tune-up, and then we took to the bike paths. His bike has gears, also is much heavier. Mine's a single speed but fairly nimble, so it kinda evens out. After her mother's funeral, my soon-to-be ex-wife went into full hate mode. She started bad-mouthing me on her social media and told multiple lies about me because she saw me responsible for what happened to her mother. She claimed I was physically, emotionally, and financially abusive, which I was not. If anything, she was all that to me. She also played off the value of my skeleton key collection, which she still claimed was worthless. However, there was already a fair amount of word spread around through my friends and former mutual friends about what really happened, and they commented on her posts about it to the point she took them down. But I still got messages from angry flying monkeys. The most common thing them saying was that I ended a sick old woman's life over keys. I told them all my side of what happened and pointed out I had plenty of evidence, including being told I wasn't invited to the funeral and showing screenshots of the text. I was sorry mother-in-law died, but I couldn't have foreseen she had to have a heart attack, and the house was so bad it was completely unlivable. A select few apologized, most just stopped talking, and a good few persistently called me a liar, so I had to block them. I ended up contacting my soon-to-be ex-wife to tell her that I'd file a defamation lawsuit on top of the divorce if she didn't stop making posts about me, which likely wouldn't bode well for her career. I'd already screenshotted everything I need from her profile before she deleted the posts. Well, she tried to say I was blackmailing her, but she stopped. Then she played the whole situation off as just being angry in the moment, but her lying was still called out and she lost her credibility. She soon shut down her social media entirely and called me afterwards to blame me for it. Then she mocked me and said she was glad I was divorcing her. She told me I'd never satisfied her in bed as I was too vanilla, and she wished she could have gone back to her ex-boyfriend. That one actually stung a bit. To clarify though, my soon-to-be ex-wife never cheated on me. Many people figured she did, including my friends, but no, she just spent a lot of time with her mother. I've also spoken to the man who dated her before me. Some of my soon-to-be ex-wife's former friends were still in touch with him and gave me his number. He told me he dumped her because she and her mother treated him the same way they treated me after I married my soon-to-be ex-wife, which means their playing nice for 3 years was one hell of a calculated move. I also learned from the guy that he found out the guy who dated my soon-to-be ex before him also dumped her for the same reasons, and he was a high school sweetheart. I'm afraid there's still more to this, and we'll make another post soon. I will say though that the divorce is underway and not going in soon-to-be ex-wife's favour. Many people on the back of that one suggesting OP go no contact. Then OP came in with another post and says, after the social media incident, soon-to-be ex-wife tried one last desperate measure to get back at me, which was to track down my mother that I was no contact with. She probably found her through Facebook, because I know my mother has an active page there. My soon-to-be ex-wife knew exactly why I'm no contact with this woman. I told her for years the things my narcissist mother did to me, but she went to see her anyway. Either she was looking for a replacement maternal figure, or she did it entirely to spite me, or maybe even both. Either way, we all know she's petty as fuck. Despite being years no contact, my mother wasn't far away. I never really moved far from where I was raised, and my soon-to-be ex-wife fed my mother a very embellished sob story. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize, and it turned out to be my mother. First words out of her mouth were, "How could you?" She wouldn't even give me the time to speak by just saying, "I don't want to hear your excuses." Then she went on a rant about how the lie soon-to-be ex-wife told her. I just ended the call about halfway through said rant and then blocked the number. I remember thinking to myself at the time, just great. The two people I hate most in the world are now banding together. Soon-to-be ex-wife figured out where I live. I don't know how, but it doesn't really matter anymore. What did matter was she showed up with my goddamn mother. This woman was just as bad as I remembered her, except now she has bleached blonde hair. She's still dressed as if in denial about her age, and was still judgmental and narcissistic. But the moment she started yelling at me, I snapped and lost it on her and soon-to-be ex-wife. I started ranting about all the stuff soon-to-be ex-wife and her mother had put me through, and how I wasn't surprised that my own crazy mother would side with a toxic lie like her, without even questioning what my half of the story was. I ended up ranting about a whole lot of other stuff that happened, and for once my mother looked damn scared of me and didn't even try to counter. I don't know how long I was ranting at them. It was just word vomit and yell-splaining to the point I almost mentally checked out while my mouth did the work. But I told my mother about all the things my soon-to-be ex-wife and mother-in-law did to me. About the theft of my collection, about mother-in-law's hoarding and the condition of her house, and how she and soon-to-be ex-wife trapped me in a fake marriage. How soon-to-be ex-wife admitted to trying to baby trap me and then bringing my own mother over to try and stick it to me. I looked over at soon-to-be ex-wife and said if her big plan was thinking my mother had any power over me, she was dumber than I thought. And yeah, I ranted about how soon-to-be ex-wife thought my skeleton key collection was worthless, and exactly how and why it wasn't. Police eventually showed up because neighbor had called them. I had a CCTV camera going inside my apartment watching the door, and it saw enough. So there was video proof I never laid a finger on either of them at least. The police broke things up and escorted soon-to-be ex-wife and mother away. The cops thought I was the bad guy at first. A grown man yelling at two carrying women didn't exactly look good. But they took the time to listen to me and I showed them the camera footage. My mother looked downright scared of the cops and didn't even want to talk to them. And soon-to-be ex-wife knew exactly what I'd do if she'd lie to them. So they fessed up as to why they were there, but claimed that giving me a talking to was all they intended to do. Right. And Zeus didn't throw lightning. Oh wait, he did. Who knows what those two would have tried, were it not for the police and my temper. No one was arrested, but I made it clear I didn't want my mother or soon-to-be ex-wife coming back. Right after they left, I went to the police station and filled out a report on the incident for a paper trail, in case of future stalking. Even though one of the officers tried to tell me that was too much for the situation when all they did was show up at my door. He also seemed to take offense to my making a report against my mother and soon-to-be ex-wife. I told him that he didn't know those people and they were relentlessly narcissists. After making the report, I called up my best friend and told him what happened. He asked if I wanted to go riding to clear my head, and I said yes, and we went out biking till our legs were numb. The next day, I texted my mother from the number she called me from and explained some things in detail, and even sent screenshots of proof I had on some things. I made sure to do all of this in text for two reasons. One, so I wouldn't actually have to hear her voice, and two, because I could screenshot all the texts and give them to my lawyer for divorce case against soon-to-be ex-wife. My mother and soon-to-be ex-wife told her a very different story that had been abusive in various ways. I told my mother she was free to have a relationship with soon-to-be ex-wife, but I wanted nothing to do with either of them, and I called the police if either of them show up at my apartment or any future one I may be living in again. She did not message me back for several days. I also sent messages about what happened to other relatives and asked they be passed around just in case soon-to-be ex-wife went crying to them too, which I guess she was smart enough to not bother doing, because none of them heard a peep from her. Soon-to-be ex-wife ended up having a huge fight with my mother, in which my mother kicked her out. My mother finally texted me back and said she wasn't willing to risk staying on soon-to-be ex-wife's side when it meant being dragged into the crossfire. Then she gave me a short sort of apology, which I accepted as good enough because getting my mother to apologize for anything is like pulling teeth. I stated I still don't want a relationship with her because I know she still defends the way she raised me. She told me she understands and and said to have a nice life, somewhat passive aggressively. Then I reblocked the number. Soon-to-be ex-wife has not yet retained a lawyer for our divorce, then or now. I'm pretty sure she realizes she can't win with all the evidence I have against her. Every dumb thing she did gave my lawyer more ammunition to work with. She hasn't been fighting back much at all. Not that there's anything to fight over. Our formerly shared bank account and rented house were our only joint assets. But I took my name off the account and we both moved out of the house. My credit is locked down and I have cameras and I'm taking no BS from her. I think she may be scared of me now. Not long before I started posting again, she moved out of the state too. She apparently got a job transfer and notified my lawyer she was leaving and where she was going, but she'll be back whenever she needs to appear in court. So unless something else crazy happens, I won't be needing to update again until after the divorce. What an absolute saga, and the divorce is still to happen, so I can only imagine there's going to be more drama there, you know. This soon-to-be ex-wife seems to thrive on it. And after we get a saga like this, I always like to think about how it all started. And it all started with those keys and a mother-in-law thinking she's entitled to them and stealing them to buy a phone. You think, bloody hell, that went crazy, right? There was one more comment and reply from OP before we turn it to you guys. Sandman said, "Now I see what was going on, although it's just a hunch. I think they wanted you to get in trouble with the law. A man attacking two defenseless women didn't have to provide evidence as police would believe them over you. If you didn't have evidence to back you up, they never expected you to have that, so when you showed the footage to the police, that was it. They knew they couldn't catch you out. Still be on your guard though, and have cameras wherever you can, especially while riding your bike." Opie says, "Holy crap, you may be right. I don't know which neighbor called the police. If my mother and soon-to-be ex-wife called them so they'd show up at just the right time. They might have been trying to frame me. I'm talking with my lawyer about that right away. She could subpoena phone records. Thank you for that info." But now, I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this one? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories as always. Whew, this was a doozy. I love a doozy, you know that one. Always appreciate your time, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care, and much love.